Is everybody ready? Everybody's good? Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is James Ravella. I'm the Commissioner of Emergency Services and Public Protection for the state of Connecticut. Today we're going to talk about a very sad incident that began in the state of Connecticut. On Monday, shortly after 3 a.m., a 14-year-old young man was dropped off at St. Mary's Hospital in Waterbury. It was apparent that he was not shot in Waterbury. The Western District Major Crime Unit of the Connecticut State Police joined with the Waterbury Police Department in a joint investigation. At this point, the Major Crime Unit will be taking over the investigation due to the proximity, the jurisdiction of where it occurred. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you a few more things about kind of what the old beat cop or all this chief of police would tell you. He would tell you that there's 100 to 200 kids in this state, youth, that need some taken to custody, that need to be slowed down in life.
Yeah, indeed.
So what that means, folks, is this. Some of these kids become crime waves to municipalities and to different areas around the state. And there's a lot of, we need to save their lives, right? We need to make sure that they have the wraparound services. They need to know that we do not want to put them in jail, but we need to slow them down. Also, we need to protect our public. Once you steal a car, and these investigations revolve around stolen cars, once you steal a car, you have an inexperienced driver with a high-powered machine, of which they're not capable of operating. So I see the numbers from most of the municipalities monthly and quarterly. It's heartening to know that we are seeing a reduction in auto thefts, but we still need to do more. And that more includes many more services for these kids, but 100, 200 need to come into custody to stop those crime waves. Now, I want to say to the family who's joined us today, the mother and grandmother, my deepest sympathies. You know, as chief, I've been to a lot of these, and they're not pleasant. But we've talked over the investigation with the families, and we believe it's going to come to some resolution very soon, although it will continue. I'm not at liberty to talk about the names or the circumstances of the case because it's still active and ongoing. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Mayor OLeary from Waterbury.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Neil OLeary. I am the mayor of Waterbury and have been for 10 years, but prior to that, like Commissioner Ravella, I was a police officer in the city for 30 years, the last 7 as chief of police. We have seen an inordinate amount of juvenile crime starting back probably around 2018, but really escalating through COVID. Since COVID, it's been much more difficult. The number of stolen cars stolen throughout Waterbury, Bridgeport, Hartford, New Haven, and every town in Connecticut, and even outside of Connecticut, has been alarming. The number of cars found within each city I mentioned are mostly, believe it or not, stolen from outside of those jurisdictions and dumped in Waterbury. As Commissioner Ravella stated, in Waterbury, there are probably 20 offenders, most under the age of 18, who are responsible for at least 80% of the crime in the city of Waterbury. The juvenile justice system, it needs tweaking. In 2014, the Juvenile Justice Oversight Policy Committee was put into place. Needed to be. There were many things that needed to be changed and things that were changed. Here we are now, 7 and 8 years later. Some of those things, now that history has given us a chance to learn more, need to be talked about, need to be tweaked, need to be re-examined. When I tell you 90% of juvenile offenders, the system works well. It's the high-risk 10% that we're having such a difficult time with. And those are the individuals, those 20 individuals I mentioned in Waterbury. We label them high-risk repeat juvenile offenders. They're the ones involved with the stolen cars, the gunplay, the shootings, the robberies, the increase in crime. And so I'm grateful, and our condolences are deep. The people of Waterbury were deeply saddened and shocked with what happened Sunday morning shortly after 3 a.m. when a 14-year-old is dropped off at St. Mary's Hospital. The state police, the Bridgeport police, the New Haven police, and the Waterbury police have worked tirelessly around the clock on this incident since it happened. I can't go into any detail either, like Commissioner Ravella. Those details will come out soon. But I want everyone here to know that the police are working as hard as they can to get their arms around these issues. Thank you.
And the legislature needs to untie their hands.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Woods. I'm the Executive Director of Hartford Communities That Care. You've already heard comments from both law enforcement. You'll be hearing from the governor and others. Just over the last course of this last 40 minutes, we just got through hearing from moms and grandmother about their son, about his friends, about his aspirations, about his hopes, about all those things that this young man was seeking to do, but also all those things that he had been trying to do to also help his own friends. There's a serious misperception out here about young black men, Latino men that are out here in our streets or find themselves in our streets. And the picture goes something like this, that they don't have caring parents, that they don't have a supportive community, that they themselves are just caught up in this world that is very attractive to them, when in fact it's the complete opposite. Complete opposite. I've dealt with thousands of families along these lines, and the story from my view and the story from their view is one that these parents consistently ask for support and help, not only from systems, but also from neighbors and from folks like myself and others. But we do live in a society right now that, especially over the last couple of years, has been stretched thin. And I'll tell you something. Not once did these parents, grandma and moms, blame folks for the conditions, or at least blame folks who were supposed to be and are in position to help. One of the things they consistently said, that also folks need the support. And so as we think about probation, parole, law enforcement, and those that provide services, folks, these parents want to make sure there's opportunity out there and that their children and their families are safe and the resources are there.
Yes.
And until we make those investments and stop with the BS, until we make those investments, we're going to keep seeing, unfortunately, situations like this, where you have mothers and grandmothers and brothers and sisters out here grieving behind, quite frankly, as Mom just put it, this can be fixed. But let's stop playing games. Governor, make the doggone investments. Legislature, make the changes that need to be made to make sure that people get the supports that they need. And let's make sure we all come together to put together reforms, if that's what we're looking for, but also reforms that have resources that follow to make sure that young people, like this young man, can live to go off to a college of his choice or establish a career that he had aspirations for. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jackie Santiago. I'm with Compass Youth Collaborative, and my heart goes out to Mom and the grandmother here today, but also all the other mothers who have experienced loss. We're here today because we want to make some changes, not only to the juvenile justice system, but to the systems in general that help support parents in our communities. There's no doubt in my mind that this happened. There's no coincidence that it happened during COVID, when there's a lack of resources, when things have been shut down, when kids did not have adequate outlets for their energy, and they're just growing to be the adults that they can be. And as a result, we see an increase in violence, an increase in the car thefts that we see in the community. While these kids have a break, while they are, whether it's incarcerated or on the bracelet, and we know where they are, we should also be sinking in resources for these kids. Just the mere fact that we put them behind bars or monitor them alone does not mean that they won't go out and do it again. It's about exposing them to what's right. It's about teaching them the right path, giving them resources, giving them mentors that help them to make the right choices. And we have to make those investments. It's not one or the other, it's both. There's no coincidence that this is happening in our poorest communities, affecting our Black and brown men of color. We need to do better because our lives depend on it. And so I'm asking all of us to come together and find ways to make those tweaks to the juvenile justice system to keep our kids safe, but also remember the supports that they need in order to help them navigate to a more peaceful life. Thank you.
I'll just tell you what I heard talking to mom of a young man we'll just call Will. He was a great kid. He was doing pretty good. And COVID hit, things shut down. He started going a little stir crazy. You know, they even cut down the nets of the basketball hoop. And he got into a car he shouldn't have gotten into. And one of the things that Mom said was, yeah, I wish there were more outlets. I wish there was more to do. I wish there was more Compass. I wish there was more outlets. I'm glad our schools are going now. I'm glad we have more social workers in our school, more listening to them. But at that point, I wish the system had just been a little bit stricter. I think I have that about right. That I wish the probation had been a little stronger after his first offense, getting in the wrong car. I wish that the ankle bracelet had GPS, so it didn't just track when somebody left the house, but tracked where they went. He had a loving mother and a grandmother, and right there with this young man, a lot. And that would have probably given this kid a better chance to be alive today. We got a lot we got to do. And I think sometimes the people look at this just as law and order are understating the nature of the problem. I mean, the stress that our community's gone through, I think Andrew said it pretty well, where people are stressed out. What you've seen in terms of domestic violence, what you've seen in drug addiction, what you've seen in terms of fist fights in the hallway, what you've seen in restaurants, what you've seen at airports, is particularly hitting communities like where this young man came from. And we're going to do everything we can in terms of the wraparound services and support services we need. We're going to do everything we can to keep young men like this alive. And I also am reminded of what Neil OLeary said, that 90% of these kids are good kids. They went through a really tough time, a lot of stress, and they need some additional supports. They need some additional love. They need the mentors. They need the apprenticeships. And some of these kids, we got to be a lot stricter with. It's probably, 10% of these folks are creating 90% of the problems, 90% of the auto thefts, 90% of the shootings out there. And I take that very seriously. Not only are they endangering their lives, they're endangering the lives of everybody around them. Look what happened in the shooting in this case. Somebody who most likely had a rap sheet as long as my arm. And what we tried to do is a couple of things. We tried to, make sure that every single judge, when they get that call in the middle of the night, knows in detail what the nature of that person who's been picked up is, see if that's a first-time offense or see if it's a multiple offender, so we know we can get justice right. And if that person should be detained, that person will be detained. So they're not a danger to themselves and not a danger anybody else in the community. You know, I'm told that we've got our courts have been backed up a lot given COVID, and we weren't having in-person courtroom hearings, and we're going to do everything we can to catch up. I'm going to do an interim class of judges. We'll be able to announce that, I think, within a week or so we can start adjudicating these on a timely basis and make sure that people should not be out in the street or not out on their street, and that we can keep our communities safe. And we have places we can put these folks that, short of full prison. I mean, we've got secure group facilities where the kid does not go out and have the opportunity to endanger himself or endanger others and hopefully get back on the straight and true, but they're not out there in the community causing risk and mayhem, which is what we've got going on right now. I believe in community policing, and I believe that we need more folks from the community policing in the neighborhoods. You know, we put additional support for overtime and the things to help our municipalities out. We have hired the biggest class of state police over the last 2 years, twice as many as we had before. Most diverse group of state police we've ever had. And I think more and more of our municipal police are doing the same. They are hiring. So we have more people in the community looking out for each other. They can deter crime where they see crime and hopefully deter incidents like what impacted this young man so we can head it off. I think when people just say it's purely law and order, they miss the scope of the problems that a year and a half of COVID and a year and a half of quarantine have caused. It caused real hardship for this young man, and I see what is happening in the streets of our communities. And I think you see the multi-pronged approach. It's all the above. It's working with moms and dads. It's giving them the enforcement tools they need, working with our local police, working with the amazing social service agencies. So all the above approach can help deal with this in a serious way. Look, we're doing better. I'd like to think the crime rate is going to continue to go down, but it is not enough. I just heard the most heart-rending story you can imagine from a mom and a grandmother whose kid was doing well, whose kid was about to go to an amazing high school, play football, was all set, ready to go in 30 days, a good kid who got in the backseat of a wrong car. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that never happens again. Thank you.